Our conversation for this hour is looking at who holds the accountability holders accountable? And that is a conversation that we'll have this morning with no stranger to the Situation Room. Wakili Danstan Omari is here with us this morning. Wakili, good morning.
Morning. Hi.
How are you?
Are you sure I'm fine? Today is Fool's Day. I might be fooling everybody around here.
That you're fine and you're not fine?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. How are you not fine?
All right.
No, you see, the day itself determines which side you take. When you want to take an advantage, you say you are unwell. When you don't want, you say you're fine. So today is a chameleonic day. The day when you cannot be known when you are saying the truth, and when you are saying the truth. But Spice FM always says the truth.
Voila.
And if we decide to abide by the law,
yes,
and decide to fool you,
decide to fool us.
No, here Spice, we can't fool people on the law because the law, it's always very clear.
The law is always very clear.
Yes.
if we tell you that actually we didn't actually invite you,
and we say, well,
but we're just being polite because we've seen you.
That might be the case.
No, now that would be fooling you.
Yeah.
Because we actually did invite you.
And I appreciate Kenyans. Good morning.
Karibu sana Wakili.
Asante.
Good to have you here. Well, let's welcome you properly, shall we? CT will tell you where he's gone this week and share that proverb with you. And then you tell us what you think about it.
Perfect.
All right.
We are in the country of the Comoros. Comoros is an archipelago. Extensive islands together which form this nation we call Comoros. The proverb: a beggar won't mind being insulted. A beggar who cannot take insults will go hungry.
Yes. Those guys told our something. Takacha mvunguni, sharti iname. So if you are just thumping and you have nothing, then you'll go hungry. But when you know you have nothing, you take whatever is available, if it shall be given to you. How does it reflect to us? 2027. Will people vote because of lacking, being beggars, or will people vote because their brains will tell them, this is the principle, vote because I've got to vote for you. So it's a big lesson that the politicians will always keep everybody a beggar. So that you get handouts, you vote for that person who gives you an handout. Those who don't have handouts will have a big problem come 2027.
Indeed. And that's what we're looking at. I love the way we can always apply these things to daily life, you know. So let's look at a couple of things that have been happening over the last couple of months, shall we, Wakili? And when it comes to the law, we like to take this constitution, everybody walks around with it in their pocket, and we throw the articles and chapters at people, and we say, according to chapter, and, article such and such of the constitution, thus must happen. But somehow, we seem to be abiding in a position or in a state whereby not always do we see that the very tenets of the same law are followed. And there are too many examples of the same. We can begin with by-elections. That for a certain reason, seats fell vacant. And that the law says that within 90 days, a by-election then should have been held so that the representation of the people that is guaranteed by the Constitution will be upheld. We've not done that for 2 years. Okay, fine, whatever. We also know that within Parliament, for example, certain borrowing ceilings should not be passed according to the Constitution. But, we ignore that and we just go ahead and do whatever we want to do. Okay, nobody really pays any kind of attention. We also know that according to the law, if somebody is suspected of having broken the law, that the process that should take place is that this individual should be brought before a competent court, charged, and then be given a chance to be heard. But we see people disappear too many times without number, and nobody really pays attention to that. So the law has become, in many cases, a mere suggestion. So the question today is that we're asking, with these things that we see over and over, and we say, we just want to shake it and say, why can't we just abide by the law and do the right thing all the time without being questioned? What is supposed to be done to hold the accountability holders accountable?
Well, the country, when you talk about accountability, we are talking of two things. Governments are created to protect life and property, purely. That is the essence of creation of government. Property is defined in so many angles, whatever it is. Governments run by people's taxes. It is the taxes that run government. So it is the people funding themselves. The people made the constitution providing for how they want to be governed. They donated those powers to several organs of government. But they retained the residual power that if they do not govern according to the way we have said, because we are the employers, then there are two ways. One, we take that government home, that is a general election, 2027. Two, we impeach whoever does not want to comply with what is happening, the processes that were done for Gachagua and the governors in Meru and the others. Third, we recall those leaders in MCAs, members of parliament, the Senate, the legislature. We recall them if they have failed to deliver whatever they do. Fourth, and the most critical issue, is Article 3 of the Constitution that gives the people the power to defend and protect the Constitution. People, as Kenyans, read Article 3 very well. It gives us the power to defend. If government misbehaves or if an agency does not comply, it is us, the public. For example, if people are disappearing and they cannot be found, the law provides that citizens can exercise citizens' arrest. They can't exercise the power, police powers bestowed on guys who have come from Kiganjo, but the people have that power. They can arrest citizens' power. Two, people can file petitions. Those petitions under Article 37 can go to any other. You can present those petitions to Parliament, you can petitions to everywhere. People can demonstrate. People can carry demonstrations and show displeasure to certain government positions. People can sue, go to court. Originally, there was the concept of locus, that you really do not have any injury that has been caused by a decision of government. Today, you can walk to the Constitutional Court in Garibatura. You can walk to the Judicial Review Division in Nyamira. You can walk anywhere and enforce rights. Then lastly, we disperse these forces to other constitutional organs. There are around 13, the independent organs like the IEBC, like the Judicial Service Commission, like all these things. The question that has always people have asked is, then why are we not having a panacea of development in this country? Why are we still struggling? Yet the law, as I've said, is very clear. The Constitution gives everybody and every organ the power to work. The answer is simple. Until the day we divorce politics from running of affairs of the state, governments are created politically. The public service is supposed to be a political. What happens is when you find the politicians have entered in and they have taken now the management and control of the affairs of the state, then you find that that country does not develop. We fall into that category. Equally, failure to appreciate that the political organs called the opposition, that is funded by me and you, the political organs called parliament, have gone to bed with the executive. The attempt to muzzle the fourth estate, that's the media, to also succumb to that level is one of the innuendos the executive will always play.
How do we see that, Wakili? How do we see that there's an intent to muzzle Parliament? That there's an intent to muzzle, or rather, bend Parliament to then act on the whims of the executive? How do we see a manifestation of that?
For example, the other day you saw when a policy document said that all media houses adverts are going to one house. Really? Is that the concept we are talking about? The fair distribution of national resources to all the players in that sector? The courts have come in and have brought sanity. So my take is that let us not remain a mourning country. We have enough we can do. We have enough weapons, not pangas, not rungus. We have enough statutory and constitutional weapons to put in place to bring checks and balances. I've been quite early in this country for long, 60 years plus is not a small time. The trend from when we were in a one-party state to today, the level of democracy, the level of assertiveness, the level of intelligence of Kenyans, the level of pressure being exerted in government, it is quite very, very encouraging. I saw the president yesterday address citizens. I saw the media categorically exchange as if it was an equal game between the head of state and the media, the journalists who are interviewing. That is a great, it started with Mark Masai in Mombasa when he asked for where is the contract for SGR, and President Uhuru said, you want it? I'll give it to you today. Today, it has not been given. But you can see the level of development, the level of accountability. The president was put to task. What the media only failed to do, and I was expecting to see that somebody could have run to where the president was saying there is a market and capture it so that Kenyans are able to see real time, is the president saying the truth or not the truth. But I know today all that the president said, the media will cover to show Kenyans that is it true or is it hot air that was being said?
Now, Okello, let's talk about the formation of government, the government for the people, by the people, right? And here is a government that has been put in place, including all the other institutions. It is the people that give them power, including the commissions. Talk about judiciary. Yes. And here is a question where you talk about Parliament has been muzzled, but my opinion is Parliament has allowed itself to be muzzled because it is an independent institution. It has its own mind and body and everything that runs it, but they have allowed themselves to be in that box where they are controlled. But here is a question where the citizenry, as per the constitution as well, have come out strong to push back and say this is what it is we want, but have been met with fire, force, and death. Which begs the question, as we talk about running the affairs of the country in a situation where you find that the citizens are equally being beat up, who runs the country that has been put forth by the people who have come back to check the government?
Well, this brings out to a very fundamental question. Do people vote or do machines vote? Are people at queuing to vote human beings exercising their rights to think right? Or they have suspended their brain to think right, they become robots, vote, get out, and as they are walking outside the booth, they have started complaining for another 5 years. Why do I get this narrative? A voter is completely a different animal. A voter is minus the capacity to think outside one ethnicity. A voter is a person who does not see development, sees the 50 shillings or the 1,000 shillings is given. A voter is completely different. Because you see, when you want to see how people vote, do they vote based on the principle of gender? No. If we are voting on the principle of gender, all leadership positions would have gone to our sisters, but they don't. Do we vote based on who has a clear manifesto for us. We vote for whose manifesto is more deceptive and more appealing, without questioning ourselves, what will be the funding model? What will be the source to put what you are telling us to do? A voter is a different person. A voter, and this is one of the issues that are going to happen in 2027. Are we likely to see voters, the elites and the Gen Z, and a few who normally vote based on their right, exercising their right? What is the majority of Kenyans? Look at what happened in the US. The intelligent voter, the epitome of democracy, the biggest level of development, the technological development country, voted Trump. That was their guy. You remember? That's what their guy.
Yep.
So it is not about who is best for us. It is who carries the emotions of the day, who takes advantage of the prevailing situation in 2027.
So are you saying, Wakili, that all these things that we are talking about, for which CT earlier today said that, we need to be paying attention to some of these things, it's not about that. It's not about following the law. It's not about protecting people. It's not about providing education. It's not about any of those. It's about the person who makes you feel in that moment welcome, safe, comfortable in that moment. Is that what we're saying? That at this level, whereby you would say that there's a maturity of politics to a certain extent, that people are still voting on how your belly feels on that day, and not for the person who is going to essentially follow the law, who's going to abide by the Constitution and insist that it is upheld. It's not about the person who's going to make sure that the law is actually followed, that your people are not dead or disappeared, that your sick are taken care of, that your children are educated. We are saying that it is not that person that Kenyans want to select.
That is the person Kenyans don't want to elect. Surprisingly, that is the enemy of the citizens. Because all through, when you look at the essence of a country, we do not get foreigners running our affairs. We give Kenyans the job to run us. We know they do not have the capacity to deliver. But we say, if we do not give this person this job, then we'll commit suicide. Then the person says, fine, don't commit suicide, give me the job. But I'm incompetent, but you people are insisting. So the Kenyans have insisted to elect mediocrity all through. But they expect results. I give always this analogy. You give a child a certain responsibility to do, but you expect the results to be that of a professor at the University of Nairobi. That child cannot deliver. Garbage in, garbage out. So until we have that constitutional document called the vote that can liberate you, or that can take you to anguish for 5 years, until we train people to use that simple weapon. When Nurdin Haji and the general CDF says that stop the concept of Ruto must go, and they tell you use your constitutional right to take him home, use that right. On the second Tuesday of August, 2027, you have the weapon. You take that weapon and keep it in a bank, in a safe. You walk without your brain to the vote, to the ballot. Then you continue crying for 5 years. So until we exercise our right as citizens, we the people, the sovereign people who have the power, have refused to exercise that power. And that is what Nurdin is telling Kenyans. That is what Kaharili is telling you, that you are carrying the most lethal weapon. A weapon that nobody can be able to defend, but you don't use it.
Actually, Nurdin Haji didn't speak at all about the slogan of Ruto must go, neither did he touch on the matters you've spoken of. He merely spoke about NIS, the history of it, and where we now are. The person who spoke about that was General
Kahariri.
And the context in which he was talking about it was both bodies were breaking ground in doing something that had never been done before. These are services that never speak to the public. And Nurin Hadi commented and said, it is because of the many things that come out of this secrecy that we've decided to come and explain what we do and to try and bring about a platform where some transparency can actually be seen within limits. That's what he said. But we are going to be more open than we normally are. And if you looked at the people who were invited, that's what they were saying. The general was talking about his functions, their duties, and what it is that they are mandated by the Constitution and the law. The Ruto must go comment came about as him referring to the rights of citizenry, yes, and says it is your right.
True. Okay.
That is your right. You are allowed, it's free speech. You're also allowed to protest.
Yes.
He says, but we cannot break the law. It's in that context.
Yes.
It seems that, politics mixed with the law then provides this drink that somehow you can't get over, but to just keep taking it. That you don't. How do you then separate when you say, okay, yeah, things are happening, and we know that if we had a different kind of leadership, we can get that through the vote. It doesn't seem to really resound with people, though.
But no, the leadership discussion has to be clear, crystal clear, because what can a leader do and what can't they do? Because the conversation we have is as though the leaders must do everything, and they can't. It is simply humanly not possible. If we spell out and say this is what they must do, and then they don't do it, then we know.
Can they follow the law?
They must.
There you go.
They must be at the forefront of setting the examples of abiding by our laws and the Constitution. Because whether we like it or not, when leaderships abrogate the law, then they're in essence giving permission to everybody else to do the same. Because they have led.
Because, City, you see, when you talk about our leaders, is it that they don't understand the law? They do. They intentionally choose not to, because let's look at Kenya operates under a system of checks and balances, ensuring no single entity has absolute power. The people, through elections and civic engagement, play a key role in running the state by choosing leaders.
There's a problem again with the system, or the political system that we have chosen. We chose the American one. There is wisdom in those of a parliamentary one or a mix. There's wisdom in it. To understand it, in theory, is difficult. If you look at what is happening now in America, with a president who's completely gung-ho, and he has a majority in the Senate, and he has a majority in the Congress. My friend, that man is seeking to pass laws that will make him a dictator. And it's a constant debate because he knows he has the majority. That is what people avoided by having democracy. But you can use democracy to get back to that same position.
When you look at the American model, when you look at the Kenyan model, see leaders from a point of commercial investors. Commercial investors do market research of who is going to be their target market. And that target market is segmented according to what you want. At the end of it, every business person looks at the bottom line. So politicians are looking at what do Kenyans want. They are responding to what Kenyans want. So that instead of doing CDF to pay school fees for children who are going to school, the Kenyans don't want you to pay school fees. They want you to get that money and hand them as handouts. You fail to give them the handout, they don't elect you. So the leadership is a product of the market. And let us not run away. Because when we hear the president allocating, this was allocated this amount of money, I allocated this amount of money, I allocated this amount of money, where is parliament? Because the people, Kenyans will believe that they must walk to State House and ask for a road.
Which they shouldn't.
That is what they believe. And that is 97% of the country who has that perception.
Kenyans believe that you must actually walk to the house on the hill to
You
ask
saw it
for...
yesterday in Sagan. People are asking a person who has no capacity at all to give anything. A process of budgetary allocation, a process of parliament cannot be taken into, that is what the constitution, when we move from the old constitution, the imperial constitution, to a constitutional dispensation of 2010 that dispersed power to several organs. We have gone back because that is the notoriety of Kenyans. And until we face it, very few Kenyans want to admit that we are the problem, not the leaders. The leaders are responding to what we want. So that if it is a funeral, people are there not to mourn. People are there waiting to be given handouts. So the question is, if you don't give those handouts, you don't get into position of power.
Right.
So let us start this narrative that this country is like a market. If we do not change what we want the producers, the owners of factory, the leaders to give us, we tell them what is the opposite. Kenyans, we will always have this problem forever. The Americans told Trump, chase people, expel foreigners, do whatever he's doing, and everybody is cheering. But what are the consequences? The consequences do not, the one doing does not face the consequences.
Right.
So the leadership of this country, and I'm facing every Kenyan on Spice FM Live that it is you, it is me, not the leaders. It is us who give birth to those leaders by voting them in. It is us who give them that sense of impunity. It is us who give them powers they do not have. We have not given them those powers, but we celebrate when they are trampling down on others. Because to us, we are saying our community is okay. So until we have a discussion and look at ourselves, do we vote knowing the consequences of that one tick at a ballot?
I've always been, quite... It puzzles me sometimes when we look at this issue of we seem to sell the birthright of the vote for a handout, which maybe doesn't even make it to the evening. By the evening it's done, if not in the few seconds after it's been given. But understanding the weight of that birthright, then I think also is an issue. But are we dealing with the chicken and egg situation? If things have been done the way they are supposed to be done by whomever the leadership is in place, by governments, by states, whatever, would we have a situation whereby somebody sees a leader and the first thing they think is, let me see if I can get a handout from this person? Take an example of, a story that we see all of the time, that a Dutch parliamentarian, for example, is riding his bike in the middle of Amsterdam. Do you see the Dutch folk surrounding him and saying,
No.
help with a few euros here and there?
No.
Why?
Because they have understood the job description of that guy on a bike is to make laws. They have defined their culture that anybody they are electing, your job is to make laws. We have defined our culture that when we take you in, we expect this amount of money.
Now, has the culture been defined as thus, or has it been a situation whereby, things weren't really formed in the manner in which they ought to be and people saw no choice, but let me see what I can get at the point where I can get it because, the rest of the time, I don't know what you'll be doing.
Let us understand why we are doing the way we are doing. The general population of this country is around 55 million people.
Yeah.
People above 18 are to the tune of over 30 million. Those are people who are supposed to have registered and voted. Every election, only 10 to 15 million decide for the rest of everybody. The people who have the capacity to understand the reason why people should vote don't vote. Their job is to sit and make complaints, lament, cry. How many elites are involved in an election? They're not there. Have you ever seen any politician going to campaign in Muga or in Runda or in Karen? But they live there. But they go to campaign in Kayole. Why? They are gullible. They are vulnerable. The people who are supposed to make a statement are nowhere. And they're the most people are complaining. And that's why I said 2027, the argument might be, look at what happened. I was around in 1992 when the election for multi-party started. There was a party called Ford. Everybody except Moi and the Kamodo belonged to Ford. The whole country. That was the narrative. When the elections came, Moi had won with, 2 million votes. Kibaki had his 1 point something. Matiba had his a few votes. Everybody had Moi was the president. Why? Because of the reasoning in terms of voting. Come 2002, it was Moi must go. And it was a serious issue.
Yes.
For once, the Kenyans realized that slogan had a meaning. President Uhuru Kenyatta was whitewashed completely by Kibaki. Come 2027, now those are said, we have now having a new one, Ruto must go. Can it hold to the ballot? Because, and for example, now we are likely to have 15 or 20 presidential candidates, the way it became in 1992, the way it was done in 1997. How are we going to deal with that issue? Until the elites who are listening Spice FM, until you, my sister, driving, until you, my brother, wake up, go home, tell your folks who are always asking you, send me M-Pesa money, I buy bread, send me this, my kid is not going to school. Tell them that it is you who has decided not to have money. Vote for somebody. Create a government that is responsive to your needs, not a government that is responsive to its needs. We have a disconnect between the people, what they want, and what the leaders want. Leaders will always want their own things. It is you to say no, or it is you to say yes. We have given a through pass. For example, when you look at in Kenya, it is the only country where CDF, where executive resources are manned by the legislature. Courts have spoken. The role of a legislature is simply to oversight and to make laws.
Yeah.
Here, the role of the legislature more is on implementation. And Kenyans are excited about it. Because an illusion has been created that without this will not go. Parliament passed itself and added salaries.
Did they really?
Yes.
Whatever it is, the notion outside might be different. But the people are saying Parliament has added itself resources.
Whether
Why?
it comes in the form of mileage,
Whatever it
at
is.
the end of the day, it's an added bump to what they...
And these parliamentarians, the legislature and the executive is very clear. They know a discourse, a debate that lasts more than 3 days, that must be a serious disaster in the country. Kenyans have a debate lifespan of a day. We've dealt with where many people died in Maina. We have given apologies, condolences to that. We've forgotten about that story. We had the story of Congo. We've forgotten about that story. We had the story of Baba going to Addis Ababa. We have forgotten about that story. We have the story now about the president going to... It will end. The political elite have known the level of concentration and memory of a Kenyan. 2027, it is unfair that we talk, but we forget everything.
Why do we forget, really? Because you talked about the example you gave of, say, the Dutch. Newsand gave the example of the Dutch. The fundamental thing and why it is their members of parliament or ministers are not bothered is because, one, there is a rule of law which is abided by everybody.
It doesn't matter where you are.
It doesn't matter who you are, where you are. One, the amenities, social services can be taken for granted. It is the norm. It's children going to school, healthcare. Those are things you do not worry about. So your mind is actually free to engage with other things. Why would you want to talk to your member of parliament when the things that you think are necessary are there? We are the complete opposite. You cannot take anything for granted except that you're going to suffer today, then you suffer tomorrow. Okay? Now, is this situation that we find ourselves in, given how well educated our citizenry are, or is this a situation that has been contrived? Because 12% of our people right now are food insecure, meaning they're facing starvation.
Yes, starvation.
Okay? In terms of population, around 42 million people in this country are not able to afford a healthy diet. They eat.
Yes, but that's not a healthy.
It is not a healthy diet. It means the resources that we have cannot enable us to take certain things like food security for granted. Food. Health cannot be taken for granted. Education, we're getting to a point where we also can't take that for granted. That problem does not exist in the Netherlands.
Yes.
It exists here. So now you tell me, a people who grapple with this on a daily basis, and this involves their children, and they want a life like everybody else has, how do you think these people are going to vote, and how do you think they're going to think?
And that is what I'm asking you, that taking all those things into consideration, when somebody presents an option that's going to give you a little bit of reprieve from what you have on a daily basis, are you thinking at that point about what I need for today, or are you thinking about 2027 and whether you're going to put in a president who's going to follow the laws? Tell me, what do you think is being thought of at that point?
Where I see the rain started hitting us. The rain started hitting us when we made our politics the most expensive investment worldwide. The cost of being elected as an MCA, a campaign of an MCA, who earns in 5 years not more than 5 million. The cost itself is 50 million for the campaign of an MCA. Where does this MCA get the 50 million to campaign for a salary of around 200,000 per month or 120,000? This money must be sourced. And this sourcing of this money makes Kenya, remember there is a law that was passed putting a ceiling
Yes.
on the amount one can use. It was thrown out.
Yes.
Who? Because the people were asking, if now us, it is not the members of parliament, it is us who are saying, boss, you know, if you come here telling us you have no money and Nani's daughter has died, Nani's sister is being married, you send us the money. If you don't have the money, we will not elect you. The problem is us. And the leaders have now made us dependents. They do not want any social function to function. Because the moment it functions, it goes to that Denmark. It goes to that Norway. We will continuously remain in that vicious circle of dependency, that vicious circle of need, so that every Friday and Saturday and Sunday, the black V8s rolling to the village It is money full inside for people to be given, and they celebrate. When they come back, you will not ask, what really does this man do? The only answer to put politicians and leaders to check is to sit and ask ourselves, will these handouts be sustainable?
Wakili, as we talk about Kenyans taking the role into their own hands and talking about how we need the change to happen, are Kenyans ready to have that conversation truthfully?
Spice FM has started it today. There is nothing that is impossible. This is the hardest discussion. People must discuss. People must look at themselves, have an introspective look at what is my contribution to this state of affairs in this country. Let us not be looking at what others are doing. Ask yourself, as a citizen, what have I contributed to the country going to the dogs? Then, do I have a role? Yes, a voting card. Can I get people who stand for the integrity and development of this nation to the ballot? Yes. Do that small part times 29 million Kenyans, will have done what nobody expected us to do. The day we are being led, I said the question of accountability, it is us who have the power.
Sure.
It is us, the people, who have the sovereignty. When we cede that sovereignty, who can take advantage? There is always the principle of that failure to put me on check allows me to go unchecked. This government and any other government has checks and balances. When our children were like, when we grew up, a very good example,
Right.
you could not ask whatever parents decided.
No,
When
it's the law.
when the kids reclaimed that territory, those rights of asking, why do you want me to do this and not this? The parents are on their toes. They know that school fees is your role to pay. So the question of an indolent, in law it's called an indolent, you know your rights. You sit on those rights. Then after a million years, after Jesus has come, you have died, you have resurrected, then that's when you are saying, no, but you remember, you never paid me this. Then you are told, no, there is the Limitations Act. You could have asked within this time.
So are you saying that,
are now putting to account the late President Kibaki's regime. Kibaki is not there to answer. We are now talking about Uhuru Kenyatta. That is, we had a time to put those questions to retired President Uhuru Kenyatta. We now have His Excellency, President Ruto. We must ask it now. In marriage, the church vows say, if you have no issue, and this is a third reading, you don't
forever
complain.
hold your peace.
Hold on your forever. So the question we are learning is the hard reality that admit that I, Danstan Omari, I am the cause of the country not performing. What can I do to ensure the country runs well? Once that narrative goes all over, then we'll have a country that belongs to us. We treat this country as if it's Uganda. We treat this country as if it's not ours. We see people looting government resources. Then you say, that's not my problem. A road being dug where you are passing, instead of being constructed by bitumen, somebody is using cow dung. It does not concern you because you say, this is government money. Government does not exist. It is your money. When you see a doctor stealing drugs from the hospital, he's not stealing any government merchandise. He's stealing your money. So until we have that understanding that everything government has is ours, this country is ours. Now that America has made we can never go there, where are we going to go? if we don't ask that question by ourselves.
Yeah.
And the answer remains the constitutional instrument that you have to enforce that is the ballot. Today, voters are being told to register. People are not concerned. They are not concerned. But they will be complaining after the few have selected leaders who come. And the few select the most, among the most incompetent, they select that group the best. How many people want to front for themselves to provide leadership? They don't. So the leaders that come in, if there are 10, the 10,000 will select the one who looks at least. Anyway, sawa
At least
tu.
we tried. At least.
Wacha tujaribu. Hata hakuna mtu lakini tujaribu.
Tujaribu huyu.
You saw what happened in the IBC? How many Kenyans applied for those posts? Everybody has said, me, I'll not apply for that job. Who do you want to do that job?
Has to come from somewhere.
It must be a Kenyan.
And I think those are the conversations that we have whereby, an awakening needs to start happening. And we want to thank you for being part of that conversation with us this morning. Necessary to continue. Wakili Danstan Omari has been our guest this hour. And looking at, all right, we were saying who holds who accountable. It would appear that, all of us.
All of us. Article 3.
We are all accountable.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.